David Cay Johnston points out that, in his opinion, Donald Trump was engaged in the cocaine trade back in the 80s. It might account for some of those wild income numbers we saw in his tax returns. Check it out, ding the bell, leave your comments, and please subscribe to our channel. David Cay Johnston is on the line with us. David, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Tom. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. This was totally, I just off in space
and
here.
By the way, I was just looking on the internet. I don't think they've set the date yet for the South Carolina primary.
Thank you. Do you know if Lindsey Graham might face a challenger?
Well, he will if he doesn't toe the line with Donald Trump. That you can bet on.
Yeah, that's the equation that I'm guessing. But I'm wondering, if any of these guys are going to go back and become Jeff Flakes after the primary. Do you think?
Don't know, but clearly the reason that Lindsey Graham is saying the exact opposite today of what he said during the impeachment matters involving Bill Clinton is he doesn't want to get primaried.
Right.
He is, and I've said this before, he is a naval officer who is a coward. He is not fulfilling his oath of office because he is afraid he will lose in a primary election. And the proper word to describe somebody who puts their fear of losing an election ahead of their oath of office is coward.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. David, as an extraordinary reporter, I believe you're a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter.
Yep.
Your most recent book, It's Even Worse Than You Think, What the Trump Administration is Doing to America. You've done some of the most profound and extraordinary reporting on Donald Trump. And a couple of days ago on my colleague Amy Goodman's program, I believe, you made the comment that Donald Trump was deeply entangled with an international cocaine trafficker around the time that he shows this mysterious $50+ million in income and calls it interest on his tax returns. Tell us what you were talking about.
Well, that's a little bit later than this, but this is in my biography of Donald Trump, The Making of Donald Trump, and the references to the court records, the New Jersey Casino Control Commission records, and the other things are all in the footnotes there. So people who find this hard to believe, and I understand many people find this hard to believe, can check the record. When Donald Trump got his first casino, Trump Plaza, which opened in May of 1988, he needed helicopter service to bring in high rollers from New York and Connecticut and Baltimore and elsewhere. Other casinos went to established helicopter companies. Donald Trump avoided all of them and instead went to a company called Damon Aviation, which was connected with a mobbed-up firm that made high-interest loans to people and was financed mostly with New Jersey government bonds as part of our corporate socialism in America. And it was headed by a twice convicted felon and mob associate named Joseph Wexelbaum. In the fall of 1985, so we're not that much further into the future, Donald Trump's general counsel for his casino, or one of his casinos, got a phone call that Joe Wexelbaum had been arrested by the Drug Enforcement Administration. Eventually, Wexelbaum not only he pled guilty, he confessed. He made a long, detailed confession about how he was importing cocaine and marijuana from Colombia to Florida and then having it driven up to Cincinnati, Ohio to be distributed. Donald Trump, as a casino owner, should have cut all ties with this man at that point. He should have
gone. Think.
Yeah. Well, as a casino owner particularly, he needs to cut ties with him.
Right.
He has not been convicted, however, yet. He until the point that his confession was accepted by the court.
Wexelbaum.
The judge in Cincinnati was asked to allow the transfer of the sentencing to be moved to either New York City or Miami, where Wexelbaum had homes. Well, it was transferred. But it was transferred to Newark, New Jersey, and to the courtroom of newly appointed federal judge Marianne Trump Berry, Donald's older sister.
Wow.
A woman who flew in the helicopters of this drug trafficker and, in fact, flew in Donald's personal helicopter when Joe Wexelbaum was the pilot. Now, think about that for a moment. We had a sitting federal judge who got her appointment thanks to Roy Cohn's connections to the Republican administration in the White House. A sitting federal judge flying around in the helicopters of a confessed, very big-time cocaine trafficker. The case was then moved to another judge, which is what should happen. But nonetheless, the message in the courthouse is pretty clear. If you were the chief judge, Tom, in Newark, New Jersey, when you heard about this, you would have gone nuts saying, God, I hope the newspapers never hear about this. This is a disaster.
Right.
Joe Wexelbaum got 18 months. You know what the drivers, the mules, got for driving the drugs up from Florida to Cincinnati?
I'm guessing decades.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years. I don't know how much they served, but those were the sentences. So, and then Wexelbaum is going to get out, and he has to have a job and a place to live. He tells his probation officer that he's going to go back to work for Donald Trump as his helicopter guy, and that he is going to move into Trump Tower. And somehow, with no underwriting by a bank, Joe Wexelbaum's girlfriend got a double apartment in Trump Tower with a $2.4 million mortgage. And by the way, Wexelbaum said he couldn't afford to pay his federal fines of $30,000, and all he did was pay 3 checks of $200 each. Now, there's a lot more to this story that I tell in the book, but given that level of entanglement, I'm going to add one more element. Donald Trump wrote a letter to be used by the sentencing judge in which he characterized Joe Wexelbaum as a credit to the community, you know, a stand-up guy who shouldn't serve any time because he was such a good guy. And when New Jersey casino regulators found out about it, the detectives went and asked Trump, who denied writing such a letter. When they got the letter and came back, his answer was, well, that's my signature, but I don't remember writing that letter. Now, you remember Donald Trump in the campaign said he had the world's greatest memory.
Right.
And the casino control regulators then did an investigation based on my report in the Philadelphia Inquirer about Wayne Barrett's biography of Trump, which had this story in it. They concluded that there wasn't enough evidence to establish anything, and that's because the casino regulators, to all owners, not just Trump, had an unwritten policy: never ask a question, the answer to which would force you to go after the license of a casino owner. And so Trump skated on this. But I think the evidence here is so clear that I've said, and I'll say again with you, I think the Donald was involved in the cocaine trafficking business with Joe. And Donald, if you're listening, if you think I just slandered you, sue me.
There you go. And China, if you're listening, maybe there's some documentation out there. So David, one of the other things you pointed out, and we just have a minute left before we hit a hard break here. One of the other things you pointed out is that there's no way that Donald Trump had enough assets to earn the kind of interest that he earned for several years. Where do you think that money came from?
I don't think it was interest. I think it was something else. He in 19 whatever the year is, he got $52 million of interest. That is more than 110 times what he got 3 years earlier.
Right.
And he would have had to own $350 million of very risky junk bonds or $660 million of treasury notes to earn that kind of interest. And he didn't have that kind of money. Right. So I think that was reported that way so that he reported the income. Right. But that's not what it was, and Congress should find out. And I
agree. Last question, David, real quick. Yep. I've been preaching for some time that Donald Trump is broke, that he's a total grifter. He's been broke since the 90s. He's living off loans that he ripped off Deutsche Bank for and cash flow. What do you think?
Well, he lives off cash flow. Donald is always desperate for cash, which is why he's a national security risk. And there's no question that he has brought in an enormous amount of money. But how much he is indebted and to whom and in ways the government doesn't require to disclose, we don't know.